Ever since joining a conference in the 90s, the Pitt Panthers have always tripped up and have had at least one loss in the non-conference play before going into their main slate of schedule. And this year, unfortunately, was no different. The Panthers fell to a Western Michigan team at home when they were double-digit favorites. Will they be able to rebound? We'll talk about that and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today.
Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell of a game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world! Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. This is the week of September 25th, 2021, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Vince.
And I'm Pam.
Did you come here to get over it? Did you come here for more pain? Why are you here? Well, sometimes you just like watching the same movie over and over and over again. And after a big W on the road, Pitt blew chunks all over Heinz Field against Western Michigan, and we have to ask this week, was this the enough's enough game for Pat Narduzzi? So many angry questions to ask and answer this week, Vince. And thank goodness we have Pam back to help us do all that. Welcome back to the show, Pam. You chose a very interesting week to do it.
This game was so bad I had to come and air my grievances out about the Pitt Panthers. So I'm on limited appearances this year, but this was one I had to use one of my bookings for.
A full disclosure, before the season, Pam said, I'm not coming on until they lose their non-conference game because we all knew it was coming. So she planned for this.
Alan, I was super hot after this game. And I told Pam, we got to have you on this week just to try to make some sense of what's going on here, because I'm still not quite sure if I figured it out.
I think we all have a good sense of it. I think Pam's going to give us some good sense. And I have some things to say this week because, man, did we not see it coming? We said as much, a little bit last week, half jokingly, half serious. And here we are, Pitt with that first blemish on their record, and ACC play around the corner. It's a New Hampshire prep week, which I'm super hyped for, but if you're here still listening to the show, thank you. Hail to Pitt to you. Hail to you. But I know there's a lot of people that aren't tuning in this week just because of that loss. They told me as much when I saw them around town last week, Vince. So I hope the people you talked to didn't jump the bandwagon like the people I talked to visiting this past weekend.
Yeah, well, people I've been talking to are just extremely disappointed, as we all are. Some people, I don't feel like enough people I'm talking to are giving up. I think people are still hanging in there. I think mostly because they expected it, so they were ready for this. But there's still a lot of ball to be played,
so much,
and we're going to be talking about it.
So much ball to be played. Let's get into the review of the game. We'll look ahead to New Hampshire, have a lot of fun, even though some of us are miserable. Well, most of us are miserable this week. At H2P Show on Twitter is where you can reach us. Hail the number 2 Pitt podcast at gmail.com if you want to email us. And we appreciate all the feedback and interactions we get there on Twitter. And, of course, on Panther Lair, where we're hanging out, where it was a dungeon of doom more than a Panther Lair this weekend right after the game with all the posts I was looking at there. So maybe we'll get into some of that coming up. And, of course, this week we are brought to you by Pretty Easy Podcasts. If you want to get your own podcast started, maybe another Pitt podcast, I say the more the merrier, one where you break down the first loss every year in your own special way, because this is like a new tradition on this show. Go to prettyeasypodcasts.com to get your own podcast started today. Okay, Western Michigan, let's dive into this thing. And before we start talking existential stuff with Pat Narduzzi's job and where we go as a program, let's just break down the actual game against the Broncos. Why, Pam? You're here. I've been waiting all week for this. Why was the defense so bad, in your opinion? You saw it there with your own two eyes.
In my opinion, it was the same old Narduzzi not adapting to what they were doing. They did the same slant routes, the same crap the entire game. It was Narduzzi not changing his scheme and not adapting to what they were doing. Western Michigan, give them credit, they came in and they saw a position they could attack this Pitt defense, and they hammered it home. And Pitt never adapted. And that's the same thing we've been dealing with this whole Narduzzi era. And it was like, oh, wait till he gets better players, his own recruiting class. And the defense is good and they have great players. They send guys to the NFL. However, he needs to adapt his scheme when a team, a good team, a very good team, Western Michigan, can find the weakness and exploit it.
What's this stuff about Tim Lester before the game basically called the whole thing and said that they knew what Pitt was going to do defensively and just went out and picked them apart? There's a lot of talk about that, Vince. Illuminate me. I saw some of what was said, calling Narduzzi a buffoon. A lot of people reading the subtext there.
Yeah, Western Michigan coach Tim Lester. This is not the bus driver, Alan, from what I understand. No, not the bus driver. But he was an offensive coordinator at Syracuse all the way back in 2015. Okay. And he said that he watched the tape of the Pitt-Syracuse game 300 times. 300 times in preparation for this, Alan. And you got to think, a condensed game film. I know you're watching those more than anybody. That's what, like 25 minutes, times 300. So it seems like you could, with an off season and a game week to prepare, you could get all that content in. Hats off to that guy for doing that much research on this game. And he said that he identified certain things, certain ways to attack. And he said that, watching that game back then and watching the Panthers so far this season, in terms of scheme, nothing's really changed. And like you said, Pam, they hit certain slant passes. It seemed like they only ran like 4 different plays the whole game, and Pitt just couldn't stop it.
I counted 2. I don't know if there are more than 2 different plays run.
They ran. Well, okay, yeah, maybe some different formations, but in terms of concepts or route patterns, they threw a slant over the middle. They threw a quick out. They threw a bubble screen type thing, and then they just did a handoff to the running back straight up the middle. That's all I saw. And Pam, you talked about Narduzzi not adjusting. Well, I'm interested to hear what your reaction is to this. In the press conference this week, not right after the game, but the press conference this week, he was asked about that, and he said that he did make adjustments during the game, but then Western Michigan just adjusted back.
What adjustments did he? I wanted someone to follow up and say, what were those adjustments? Because I did not see one adjustment.
I don't know what they were. Probably what he would say is I need to go back and review the tape and really look at it to see if I could understand what these adjustments were. And, he was almost kind of throwing defensive coordinator Randy Bates under the bus, kind of saying that we weren't, he wouldn't have done what the defense was doing, which is ridiculous to me. He's running your scheme.
Well, and at halftime, you as a head coach change it up. Yeah. At halftime, go in there. Well, because it wasn't like they had this offensive explosion in the second half. It was from the get-go.
Well, I will say, in the first half, the last 5 possessions that Western Michigan had, there were 4 punts, and 1 was a touchdown, but that was on a very short field, I believe, after one of the turnovers. So it seemed like at the end of the first half, they were, getting in gear a little bit defensively, and they were starting to stop these guys. But then in the second half, I don't know. They just didn't.
But this is Narduzzi's team, Narduzzi's defense, yada yada yada. We hear all about Narduzzi's defense, and the way this team can win is by defense. You cannot. I don't care about the turnovers. I don't care about the fumbles. I don't care about the poor offense. This game was lost on the defense.
Yeah,
100%. Pam's right, and the fact that he came out in this press conference just, I think, makes it look even worse from what he said.
yeah.
I mean, it just feels like some blame was deflected, and maybe it's a guy who realized that was the loss that broke his back, that gets him out of town. And that's what a lot of people are saying this week. A game from 6 years ago was used to prep for this game. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for Pat Narduzzi.
They were successful.
And they were very successful. It's embarrassing for Pat Narduzzi, for the Pitt Panthers, I think as a school, as a brand, as a university, we'll move on. Because when Pat Narduzzi's gone, I will have hope for the Pitt Panthers. But that game might be the end of his career as a head coach ever. And maybe as a defensive coordinator. Who would hire you if you were getting schemed 6 years ago? What the hell was that? And what adjustments was he talking about? Maybe we blitzed more guys and left the middle more wide open than it was in the first half. Maybe that's what the adjustment he's talking about. It made no sense. It was like watching a high school game and a team just runs the same play over and over again because the other team is incapable of stopping it. But in this case, Pitt probably was capable of stopping it. It was like they had a ball and chain and called the coaching staff holding them back. I blame no players on the defense for this loss. I don't blame anybody.
Well, I just don't understand. I mean, it was 3rd and 6 at the end of the game, and as bad as the defense had played, you felt like if they would have just stopped them right there, Kenny Pickett would have went down and scored, and we'd have won this ball game. And now we would have still been, upset with the defensive performance, but the attitude would have been, drastically different. They were hitting that route all the time. The safety there that you're asking a safety to come up and cover a slot receiver, and they couldn't do it. I mean, and that's been something that we have seen done against this team time and time again. North Carolina has destroyed us.
Yeah.
Using those types of plays. I mean, they got that NC State game last year on the last touchdown. NC State had that same type of play. I mean, they refused to put real cover corners in the slot to cover receivers, and I have no idea why.
Virginia Tech has done it too. I remember Virginia Tech doing it, and you could see it. You could watch it every single time.
Yeah, I mean, they're putting these...
If bozos like us can figure it out at home, the other team who spends time and money in the scouting is going to figure it out.
I mean, these safeties, I'm not saying they're bad players. I think, but they're not being utilized for their strengths. Maybe if you had a Paris Ford, or maybe if you had a DeMar Hamlin, you could get away with something like that. Maybe guys are more experienced. But this was, how could you not change something up at all? Personnel, scheme, I don't know what it is. You talked about blitzing Allen. Yeah, they couldn't get after this guy at all. Not one thing that they tried, they could not even get close to this guy.
I mean, they had some pressures, but the fact was they were running these quick slants to get rid of the ball so quick, and that's how you beat it. They had a great plan for beating the great Pitt pass rush, and I think this is all just disrespectful on Pat Narduzzi's end. What disrespect to show Western Michigan, a MAC team. This isn't an FCS team. This is a quality MAC team. We said their offense is not bad at all, and they just refuse to adjust. Just go out there and expect your players to be that much better than everybody and stop these plays where they're just left out on an island. was disrespectful to the opponent. It didn't do anybody any service to just not adjust and put someone in the damn middle of the field to knock
well,
down
that's what I'm saying.
pass.
Like, if you wanna cover those receivers, the way they were, fine. But you have all these supposedly good linebackers. Why weren't they? Just put a couple guys in zone in the middle of the field and have them just knock the ball down, take up space.
It's not like Caleb Ellaby was, touch passing it over a linebacker's head to make these completions, or zipping it between a real small space between a corner and a linebacker. No, this was just throwing it up into the middle of the field where receiver totally burnt the guy covering him at the line. There's nobody in the middle at all. It was a joke. And yeah, like Pam said, I'm with you. I don't care about the turnovers. I'm not even upset about some of the poor run blocking on the offensive line side. I really don't care about anything offensively from that game. They did just fine. They responded. I mean, the fact is this, you said it. This was all defensive, and I put it all on Pat Narduzzi. I almost don't want to shame any one player on this field because I don't feel like they deserve it, even though they went out and lost the game. The coaching staff just totally fumbled this in terms of game planning and then in-game execution. What a shame. What a shame, because Pitt could have been undefeated going into the ACC, but the silver lining is they could still win the ACC technically, I guess, or the Coastal. And we'll get into that in a second. Would they even adjust for the ACC play? We'll get into that in a sec, Pam. But anything left from the Western Michigan game? Do you want to call out any players? Do you want to ask why Gabe Hoy is still playing tackle for the Pitt Panthers?
I was going to say, I mean, even though I put all this blame on the defense and the defensive coaching staff, I mean, the offense still cannot run the ball. And it's very frustrating to watch. Were you surprised at, or we know I'm a big Vincent Davis fan. I guess that's the guy, right? I guess that's his guy I just feel like, I would like to see a Bondaconda more out there, and it's not going to happen, and it's just tough to watch this offense. I feel bad for Pickett.
Well, they did score 40 points, having the ball only 20 minutes of the game.
And they have as many yards as Western Michigan, practically.
But in a game like this, you want to be able to see. Usually, you want to be able to try different things out and work on things. And I would have liked to seen them run the ball more. Maybe if they were able to run the ball more, they would have had a greter time of possession in the game, and Western Michigan wouldn't have had so many opportunities to score.
And you could say, that interception thrown by Pickett was bad.
It was bad.
As great as he played. There was a sack. A crucial sack on a fourth and long.
It wasn't Kenny Pickett's best day.
But I still played pretty damn good.
Right.
There was the one bobbled snap. But, if you're running the ball effectively, there's less risk of that kind of stuff happening. And, they just don't want to run the ball, which I could understand that if you just don't want to do it. But whenever they do, they're just so bad at it. We've talked about this constantly. Running out of the shotgun, you got to have some really good personnel. You got to have some good linemen to do it because you're really only blocking with like 5 or 6 guys. And this is just not what they're doing. And it's so disappointing because at the end of last season, 3 of those last 4 games, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Florida State, they ran all over those guys, over 150 yards rushing in all those contests. I believe Georgia Tech, they went in for 300 yards against. And in all those games, Alan, they were running the ball almost 35, 40 carries a game. So they were really committed to it. But you had different personnel. Matt Goncalves was in the game last year, and he was just moving people out of the way. And this season, I just don't understand what happened in this Western Michigan game. Owen Drexel comes out of the game at center. You move Jake Cradle over from guard to center, fine. But then you have Keldrick Wilson, who is a grad transfer from Hampton College. And, this is somebody who we haven't talked about at all. Coach hasn't really even talked about this guy. We thought it would have been Blake Zubovic or Goncalves coming in, and this didn't help the running game either. So like, what? I just don't understand this. This personnel decision here, because it seems like if this is how they want to run the ball, the personnel's got to be better.
Yeah, this made no sense either. Not as egregious as what coaching did on the defensive side, but still, I don't know. I'm going to chalk this up to just trying to get guys playing time against an opponent that they thought that they were superior towards. And that's disrespectful again. It's just not shown any respect to the opponent. And who knows what we're in for against New Hampshire now, because they're not even a MAC team. But this was just it was inexplicable. This is the thing that gets me. Why is Kenny Pickett? I mean, this is how he plays, but why are you calling plays, and why is the offensive line playing poorly where Kenny Pickett has to run and dive head first and put his body on the line against Western Michigan? Dumb on his part, because he should know. He should take away some of the respect, maybe, because it's a long season. But to do this against Western Michigan and almost get knocked out of the game, and who knows for how long, that was terrifying. And I don't know who we blame for that, but that happened against Western Michigan, Pam, not UNC. This wasn't against Clemson.
Correct.
Kenny Pickett almost lost his entire arm with a guy landing on him.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's just inexcusable. He shouldn't have to do that against a September non-conference game against a MAC team. It shouldn't happen. I will say, historically in his tenure, compared to Pitt years past, Narduzzi is pretty good at beating the teams he should beat.
That's true.
And
He's
so
no
this is no, and yeah, and he's no Paul Christ either, but so this is just a big stinker on his resume, though. And in a year where they had the easiest non-conference that they're probably ever going to have, because if this alliance starts, I'm serious, like in a few years, they're going to have to play like more Power 5 teams. Or no offense to New Hampshire, they might not have a New Hampshire on their schedule in future years. They still may have some MAC opponents, but it was bad.
Yikes. And you know what? I hate to say it because I was so happy last week. Pat Narduzzi had me believing. I like that the trust he instills and how it's very hard to earn playing time on defense for him. But this week, I mean, just the tape doesn't lie. It was so plain to see. What'd you say, Pam? If a bunch of bozos like us could see how obvious your defense was being exploited, how obvious it was for you to adjust, like, who knows? I mean, this really makes you think that the administration is going to probably be asking some questions about Pat Narduzzi unless something drastically happens moving forward the rest of the season. So let's talk about it. Our next opportunity here, Vince. New Hampshire, an undefeated squad, the team I've been waiting for.
Yeah. New Hampshire. This is a team. Pitt is the only, I think, FBS team that they play on their schedule. Actually, there may be one other one, but only the only Power 5 team that they play. They've beaten Stony Brook, Towson, and Lafayette. Alan, not the one that you're used to, a different
Indiana.
one. And they're undefeated. They've forced 9 takeaways on the year, and they haven't turned the ball over. They've only committed 10 penalties. This is a well-disciplined team from all I can see. But still, 10 penalties in 3 games. But from what I can tell, this is still a team that, this should be no issue here. They need to come out just absolutely snorting and just demolish this team. And I'm not quite sure. I would think that New Hampshire is going to come out and try some of that, some of the Eastern or the Western Michigan playbook, and they better be ready to stop it.
I'm terrified of it. I'm terrified to see what defense we put out there in terms of scheme.
Well, I could tell you exactly what defense they're going to put out there.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's watching the middle of that field when they're on defense. And if I'm on offense, here's my strategy. It's the only game planning I'm going to talk about this week. For offense, Pam, I know you want to see this. You want to see running the ball. Pitch just run the veer the entire game. Just run an old school, outdated, nearly unusable offensive scheme this week, just to really hammer home to the offensive line. You need to be ready to run block in the ACC. Something needs to be done on the ground against a team like New Hampshire this weekend.
Yeah, and hopefully they come out and stomp them and we can see some Nick Patty in this game. But it needs to be a statement. Things need to look better. And I don't care about showing opponents, just come out and play your game. Don't try and get too cute. Come out there and stomp them, and let's move on to the ACC.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. Our game is not running the ball, and I don't think it should be.
No, but I think to have a little bit time of possession would have made a difference. Yeah. And no, I don't think you need to run the ball 30 times. I think Kenny Pickett can still throw it 40, 50 times, but it needs to look better than what it is.
Yeah, it needs to be more effective. But so I would still come out throwing. This is the best passing offense Pitt has had in a very long time. I would keep doing that, but I'm going to keep pounding the table talking about how we need a different lineup in there on the offensive line, and I think Abanaconda needs to get more of a opportunity in there. Only a couple carries here and there every game is just not enough. If he's as good as all these coaches and players have made him seem like it, well, let's get out there and let's see what he's really got. Let's give him a real opportunity to go out there and run by some people.
Yes, please give us Izzy. We want Izzy this game. And also, my new favorite thing, also, just to lighten it up, I'm really a big fan of Jared Wayne's big, slow yakking. I love seeing Jared Wayne after the catch, slowly spinning around guys and getting nobody, and people don't tackle him. It's very entertaining to see. I wish Lucas Kroll could do some of that.
Is he like a young Yancey Thigpen, you think?
I mean, I won't put him in that category, but he's got some of that. He's got, I think I'd say some of me in Pitt intramurals too. Just one of the great slow yards after catch guys. But that's a whole nother different type of game too. So maybe that's apples and oranges. Pitt, New Hampshire. Name one player on New Hampshire that you're excited to see up against Pitt. Good luck. I tried listening. They don't even have a student station for me to scout their student football podcast. So I'm lost for this one.
Yeah, I haven't scouted them very closely, but we should not need to. We absolutely should not need to. This should be just an absolute blowout.
Please, for the love of God, put somebody in the middle of the field on defense. Jeez, oh man. So moving after this game, though, and the ACC starts, is there college football is tough, Pam, because a loss like that, and it feels like the season's over. But is it for Pitt? Because Pitt's really, this is who they are. They're a get over a loss type team and maybe salvage the season. Is it possible Pitt could, at the end of this thing, be putting Pat Narduzzi on their shoulders and everyone said, what a job he did this year, except for that one game against Western Michigan?
I mean, the fact that the defense looks so bad has me, and it didn't look particularly great against Tennessee either. So the fact that the defense hasn't looked what it should be capable of and what it needs to be for this team to succeed in the ACC has me a little nervous.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. I think that this team can still, achieve the record that people were hoping for at the beginning of the season.
Can you remind us of that number?
Well,
what's the record you were hoping for?
Well, I'll say this: I still think this team can win, 8 or 9 games. I still think they can, and for some people, and maybe for Pat Narduzzi, maybe he needs to win 9 games, or maybe he needs to find other work. I don't know. We'll evaluate that at the end of the season. This team can still absolutely, if the goal is to, win a conference championship and play for the conference championship at least and win 9 ball games, they absolutely can do this.
The fact that they're still alive after that loss for an 8 or 9 win season is unfathomable to a lot of Pitt fans, but it's very possible. I would say damn near likely. But remember, at least I'll remind you, Pam, at the beginning of the season, I had Pitt losing their first 4 conference games and actually going undefeated for the first time in forever, non-conference. So my plans are all blown up, but I still have hope. Still looking at the schedule, still looking at how some of the other teams in the ACC have performed in non-conference themselves and in conference, and seeing injuries that are happening. I mean, Pitt is going to be going into ACC play totally alive and totally as a contender in the Coastal, because it's, well, obviously a low end Power 5 division. And, just get through New Hampshire, get that taste out of your mouth. The Georgia Tech game in a week is going to be very exciting, because it's going to be hopeful again, I think. I think Pitt can crush this week, and then, maybe we have a short memory, because you have to. Hopefully Pat Narduzzi does, and his players do. Fans probably won't until they win some ACC games. Well,
if you look back at Pitt's history, recent history at least, if you go back the past 30 years, their 2 best seasons that they've had, probably 2008, 2009, 2008, they were ranked to start the season, lost to Bowling Green in the first game of the season, a big shocker, and then at home, and then ended up having a pretty good season. In 2009, they lost an early game at NC State, who finished the season with a losing record, even though they had some guy named Russell Wilson on their team. And Pitt rebounded there to achieve a ranking in the top 10 at one point during that season. I believe 8th in the country is what they ended up being. So, they've proved they can rebound from bad losses. Now, we haven't seen it with this particular staff. To achieve greatness, they have not. But we will say, they have lost some head scratchers. There's no doubt about that. But players have never quit on Pat Narduzzi and this staff. They've always come out the next week fired up. Yeah, some years they just weren't good enough, but they have come out fired up, and I expect them to do that, because I still think there's a lot of talent on this team. And if we're to believe that in today's college football that offense is that important and you got to be able to score a lot of points, well, this Pitt team can do it, and I think that's going to keep them in a lot of games.
Positive note there to end the New Hampshire preview on what I've been looking forward to for weeks. Pitt against New Hampshire. I can't wait. Is this a home and home? Are we going to get them in their place?
No.
I want to travel there so bad. No? Okay. Maybe we'll get that on the books. Call Heather like somebody. Maybe we'll send her a note. Maybe I'll tweet at her. Why not on the Pitternet?
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets.
And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
Seafox Go on Panther Lair. Oh, this week we're hitting the Pitternet hard, and we're hitting those Panther Lair corners hard. Seafox Go on Panther Lair said, if there were 60,000 fans at Heinz Field last Saturday, does Pitt win?
No, it's just more people to see them disappointed.
I'm not going to say that the crowd makes no difference, but I will say it doesn't make maybe that much of a difference. The crowd wasn't going to be calling the plays. Put it that way.
I mean, even if it's really loud out, it's not hard to just hit a wide open slant, which, I mean, that's all they would have still had to do. That wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe if there were 60,000 fans, it would have been more pressure on Pat Narduzzi to change his scheme on defense with people screaming at him. But I don't know. Charlotte Yinzer 96 on Panther Lair says, we have hired coordinators the last 2 times with mediocre results. The next guy needs head coaching experience. I would prefer an offensive-minded guy. For me, Joe Moorhead has to be the leading candidate. Who do you guys like for the job? Any splash hires we should be looking at? First question I'd like to ask after reading that question is, does it count as head coaching experience what Joe Moorhead's done? Does that count? I don't know. He's still coordinator to me.
He is. Yeah, he's doing a great job at Oregon, and I think maybe there are some people that might just be coordinators, and Joe Moorhead might be one of those people. I don't know if that's the case, but I don't know. Pat Narduzzi is not going to go mid-season, so I haven't even, or beginning of the season, so I haven't even thought of it, but Joe Moorhead is not going to come to Pitt. So I think all Pitt fans can put that to rest. I think if he wants to coach, he's going to get a bigger job than Pitt if Oregon continues to fire on all cylinders here.
I have a splash hire. What about Coach O after?
I don't think he'll go up above the Mason-Dixon line.
I don't know. He went out he wasn't the head coach.
Could you? What?
Yeah, he's not at this point, maybe, in his career.
Whoever's
not afraid to travel, T-boy. He's newly single. I mean, he's a bachelor again. He can roam all over the country. Kids are grown. Can go wherever he wants. Oh my God! I'm gonna start lobbying for this hard if they get rid of Narduzzi.
If we are looking for a new coach, I don't want to hire anybody over the age of 40.
Oh,
we need somebody young, somebody that is hungry. I'm not saying coach Narduzzi doesn't want to win. I'm just saying we need somebody that is new, that is willing to adapt and do all the latest and greatest stuff. I think that's what we need.
Tyler Palko, here we go.
He might be over 40.
No, he's not. If we're not 40, he's barely a year or two older than us. I think. I don't know. Tyler Palko, next Pitt head coach. Jay 1976 on Panther Lair said, I feel better the next day. Pull out positives, etc. Not this time. Basically saying we've already pulled nuggets of positivity out of that game, out of that loss. To not overreact because like Vince said, the offense is kicking ass. I mean, Pam, there's definitely positives. We pulled out some already. Jay 1976 needs to calm down.
I don't know. I see what he's saying. This one was a particularly big gut punch, though. I feel like I get what you're saying, Jay 1976.
Yeah, it does, but obviously, but like the doom and gloom needs to stop, especially so early in the season. I will say that. If you're just rooting only for Pat Narduzzi, then yes, there is very little positives to take away for him. But as a team and as a program, I think Pitt is going to move forward in a positive direction. Far more Night Stalker, maybe the greatest handle of them all on Panther Lair, said about Narduzzi after the New Hampshire game. Great team win today. I thought our guys responded nicely. That's a good football team over there. I mean, that's ripped from the future headlines.
Yeah, that's probably what he's going to say. And yeah, that great team win. I hope that that's what he's saying.
I think he'll also be saying, Jerry, you know that we were prepared for this game.
Yeah, he loves talking to Jerry DePaula. Oh my goodness.
Great team win. Hey, so far this has been a great team show. It's great to have you back, Pam. And, a lot of people around town have been asking where you've been. Happy you're on the show this week. They're all talking about Pitt football, just a rough weekend in general for football fans around Pittsburgh. Well, let's just get a glimpse right now about what they're saying. Vince, what do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Trying to find out what the answers are saying.
Them teams over at Heinz Field can't win over there because that grass is so bad.
Yeah, all of them Whitfield games they allow over there, that field gets all tore up.
Oh, they'd be undefeated right now if they played with some of them AstroTurf.
Yeah, Pickett's definitely a better turf quarterback than a grass quarterback, according to them, all them analytics.
Hail to Pitt.
What the answers are saying.
So that's what the Yinzers are saying. Just not a lot of good stuff happening over on the North Shore this past weekend. We'll see. We're going to double it up again this weekend. We'll see if we could do a little bit better this Saturday and Sunday. Alan, there is some not a huge slate of college football games, but a few good ones we got to talk about.
Oh, college football! Last weekend, I was really disappointed with you. There was very little you gave me around the country to be happy about, but this week's a new opportunity, and I'm pulling real hard for the Big Ten for the first time in a long time, because I want to see Notre Dame go down to Wisconsin real bad, Vince.
Yeah. The 12th ranked Irish, a 6.5 point underdog against number 18 Badgers. Pam, this game's going to be played at Soldier Field.
It's the game day game too,
and the big noon game. So there's going to be a lot of people in town for this one. A rare Soldier Field game. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game.
Yeah, and I think Wisconsin's going to come out on top. You said Wisconsin's a 6.5 point favorite.
Yep, 6.5 right now.
6.5 points. I mean, I think that just goes to show in their loss against Penn State, they really should have won that, but they turned it over so many times in the red zone. Notre Dame's looked not great either. I think Wisconsin's going to control this game and really win here. I think they're going to win by more than a touchdown. I think they're going to win and cover. I think this is a Wisconsin control the game, and I think all of Notre Dame's flaws are going to come out.
They just have no on offense.
I know.
Wisconsin, they have nothing. I mean, what are they?
But Notre Dame's offensive line's been not great, and they can't. Kyron Williams hasn't been great this year, and I think it's a Wisconsin game here.
Yeah, I'm all about it too, Pam. I like the win. I like the cover. Notre Dame was iffy against Toledo earlier this year. I think last week was a cover against Purdue, if I'm not mistaken. So they did.
It was
only because they wouldn't let him bring that drum in there. That needs to be pointed out.
Big home field advantage last week. They really took advantage of Purdue in every aspect. But the other two games, Toledo and Florida State this year, just shows you what a vulnerable team Notre Dame is. They got a coach who's making off-color jokes in a day and age where you should be smarter in front of a camera, even if, I wasn't upset about what he said a couple weeks ago, Brian Kelly. The execution.
It was also a bad joke, though.
Just a dumb dad joke. So bad. Maybe once upon a time you could get away with it, and someone say, "Oh, that Brian Kelly, oh man, oh." But come on, it's just lame. So this lame Notre Dame team's going down in front of probably a crowd that'll be full of their fans. I think they're going to travel well for it. And that might be tough because these games have been played. Or no, did they do a Wrigley game between these two teams before? Or was that like Northwestern and some?
Oh no, I don't. Probably Northwestern. But I imagine there's going to be a lot of cheese curd eating, kibasi eating, bratwurst eating, beer drinking Wisconsin people coming down to Soldier Field for this one.
Yeah, and then if you want the betting aspect to this too, this is crazy. 80% of the cash is on Wisconsin. 95% of the tickets are on Notre Dame.
Okay, let me log on to my app here, and
that's wild. That's a wild.
Let's just put our Wisconsin.
We'll be putting a bet in on Wisconsin pretty shortly.
Someone put a big old bet on Wisconsin, putting their life on the line. There's a big yacht in Lake Michigan that's on the line in this game. I'm excited for it. Second best game of the weekend behind Pitt and New Hampshire, obviously. But then you have another good one in A&M, one of my playoff picks, in Arkansas, Vince's favorite Cinderella, I'm going to call them, in the SEC. A team that's knocked off Texas, undefeated, and ready to go toe-to-toe now in a big SEC showdown, a real one, because Texas isn't there yet.
Yeah, the big Southwest Conference showdown, Jerry's World. Number 7th ranked Texas A&M, 5.5-point favorite over number 16th ranked Hogs of Arkansas. Pam, A&M has not looked great.
No, they haven't. Not at all.
Yeah, I mean they do have a strong defense. They have a lot of good players, but to me, I think this is just too many points for a Sam Pittman team. I mean, as an underdog, this Arkansas team is tough. They got a lot of support behind them. This is kind of like a home game for Arkansas. So I'm going to go with the Hogs.
I think. Remind me once again what the spread was.
5.5.
5.5. I think Arkansas covers, but Texas A&M wins it.
Okay.
I think this is a game where Jimbo squeaks it out again, and Texas A&M holds on, but they don't look great, and there's still just too many question marks about this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They need to start to put up some numbers and look like the playoff team that you and some others may think they are, Al.
Well, we knew that going into the season that they were a team with multiple guys who they would rely on to be quarterback if they had to, and Haynes King goes down, so they got Calzada in now. But the interesting thing to me is that they just can't. They're not punching the ball into the end zone on the ground at all. I mean, only a few touchdowns, and then the A&M defense we knew was going to be awesome. So offensively, they're finding their footing. But this could be it's college football. You learn about yourself. You grow usually, unless you refuse to change your scheme or your defense. And I think A&M is going to take a big leap forward. Everything I'm reading about this thing says take Arkansas against that 5.5. Maybe take them to win. Maybe take Arkansas to just be the darling in the conference this year. But I'm not. I'm sticking with A&M. I still liked them enough. I was loving Haynes King winning the job. I was rooting for in the offseason. Gets injured. But what we're seeing out of Calzada, capable. And that's all you need to be. Jimbo Fisher can do the rest and make you look good. Just go out and execute. Going to be an awesome game. I got A&M win and the cover, I think.
Oh, this is the game. This is the game of the week, I think.
Really? Better than Pitt, New Hampshire?
Oh, no. That's a different level.
I mean, this is like, if you look up and down too in the SEC, rankings wise, all of the statistics for their units, they match up really well. They're close everywhere except that defense for the Hogs. Suspect, Vince. So this is why I'm liking that coming out party for the Aggie offense this week. I don't know if I'm looking, they're like either the worst or second to last off a defense in the conference.
Well, I'll say that if this was played in College Station, I may go with Texas A&M. But this is in Jerry Jones's house. Did you see that beautiful Arkansas statue he donated money for? Just a bunch of pigs running around. And then Bobby Bones is probably going to be at this game. Probably Joe Nichols. Probably Justin Moore. They're going to have a huge crowd at this game. A lot of support for Arkansas.
This is where game day should have been.
SEC Nation's going to be there. The real pregame show is going to be at this game.
I'm sticking with A&M, but this is the first true test of my playoff pick, and I'm going to be glued to this one. 3:30 kickoff, and that brings us to the biggest noon kickoff. Pitt, New Hampshire, the Wildcats, the Panthers, and the lowest television production value of any game going on this weekend. I'm sure of it. Here we go. Let's pick the score. I usually, when I'm betting and looking at lines and such, I'm on the PFF green line this season. That's where I've been. Pam, it's not even listed because
it's not.
It's not listed anywhere. Tennessee Tech wasn't listed last week either, so we're in that realm. But I don't know. What's Pitt winning by? Obviously, we all picked them to win.
I think it's going to be 55-14, Pitt.
Okay. I think they're going to come out really fired up. I really do. This offense is, despite some of their issues, they're really going to come out and just really light this team up. I think the defense is going to respond and do better. I expect them to win 62-0.
Oh man, I mean, this is New Hampshire has what'd you say? 3 penalties all year? 10 penalties, 3 games.
10 penalties in 3 games.
Impressive. Very disciplined offense. Very disciplined on defense. I think they play Pitt tough. I'm going to pick Pitt to win. Let's go 49-11. And I'm going to also call my shot. Lucas Kroll scores 4 touchdowns in 1 game and goes down as the Al Bundy of Pitt tight ends.
What score did you say?
49-11.
New Hampshire gets a late safety.
I think they'll go for 2. They're so disciplined.
I
be confident.
I saw somebody at the Steeler game this past weekend wearing an Al Bundy shirt. So you might be on to something there.
Whoa, Bundy. And there you have it. Pitt, New Hampshire, get ready for it. The palate cleanser for Pitt football as they gear up one last time before its ACC play. And that does it for another edition of the Hail to Pitt podcast. I had a birthday party I went to. They asked us, so you guys are going to stop doing the show now just because Pitt lost to Western Michigan? I said, give me a break. Get out of town. Of course we're going to be back. These are the shows that we do best, I think. This was one hell of a show. Pam's back. We got all that activity, the anger on Panther Laird we combed over. And you know what? College football moves on. It's not that, there's a very select category of teams that one loss and it's all over with and you panic and there's nothing to play for. Vince, Pitt's not one of those teams, unfortunately. And I think, there's some stuff to look forward to the rest of the season. Most importantly, seeing a defender in the middle of the field, first and foremost.
Yeah, hopefully we see that. There is a lot to play for. They could still rebound to have a nice season. They better have a nice season. We've said it. At least for me, this is a put up or shut up type year. They got knocked down this past weekend. Now they got to get back up and start punching somebody.
Yeah, if this week was the enough's enough game, this week will be the Chumbawamba game. As Pitt gets knocked down, they get up again, and you're not going to keep them down. The Coastal's going to have to answer to the Pitt Panthers in some form or fashion. It might not always be pretty, but they're going to be tough to play against. But first and foremost, the Wildcats of New Hampshire. We have anything left? Is Pam still? Is she like rolling on the floor there? What the hell's going on? Like,
she's still laughing about Al Bundy.
I've been looking at my notes since then. I didn't realize she was like off mic. And all right, well, we'll end the show without her. She could laugh her way to New Hampshire. Hopefully, she shows them some respect, though, Vince. And I hope you show them respect this weekend too.
Yeah, we will show them some respect after a huge whooping.
All right. Well, that does it, everybody. Thanks for listening. At H2P Shows, where you can follow us on social media. And, of course, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Tell your Pitt Panther friends that if they're real Panthers, they should be following the Hail to Pitt podcast on their favorite podcast platform. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, wherever the hell you get podcasts, we're there. Hail into Pitt all the time, each and every single week. During the football season, we'll be breaking down this New Hampshire game next week, looking ahead to Georgia Tech. But until then, Vince, tell them.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt, everybody. See you next week.